For joining us. That always startles me. Thank you for joining us tonight. Martha, Stephanie, and I thought we would give you a little behind the curtain view of the WCA Award. As Rachel mentioned in my introduction, this is my 10th year of being on the committee. I served 2 3-year terms as a committee member, and now I'm beginning my 2nd term as the chair of the committee. And I wanted to thank Fran for the beautiful pictures that I repurposed from one of her prior presentations. We thought it would be great just to show the beautiful pictures of the campus to get people excited to come back for reunion. I'm thinking about spring. I'm a summertime gal, so anything that is warm and sunny and flowers, I'm all for it. So we thought this would be a great picture. The next slide has a quote that I'm using with permission from Maria Hirschman, who's class of 68. And this quote came about because the class of 68 wanted to write little vignettes and advice to give to the class, the senior class that was graduating when Maria's class was celebrating one of their milestone reunions. So I don't usually read slides, but I think this message really resonates with the purpose that the award committee experiences and looks for when we're researching candidates. Everything you need to know about the meaning of a Wells education is encapsulated in one scene, repeated every year on Saturday morning of reunion weekend. As the parade of classes moves up the hill and into McMillan Hall, we are greeted by 2 rows of faculty applauding us as we pass between them. At this stage of our lives, we are keenly aware of the absence from those rows of most of the professors who taught us, and we know that much else has changed at Wells. But the depth of connection between teacher and student remains a constant at the college, carrying us across the generations. And Maria was gracious enough to let me use that. But why this resonates with me is that at reunion is when the WCA Award is presented to the recipient or recipients. And it's not just the connection that we make with our classmates. It's not just the connections that we make with our professors, but working on the committee and researching the candidates allows us to build those bridges to other Wells alums, whether they're classmates or not, and we get to learn about the amazing things. And one of the things that we just started hearing about the last couple of years when we go back for reunion or fall weekend is that a lot of the parents of prospective students want to know, what can you do with the liberal arts education? And I think one of the things that would be a real selling tool is for the parents to sit down and read these citations. So I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but it's really amazing to learn about what people have done with their Wells education. So to start with the beginning, back in 1964, around there, the college the WCA put together a committee, and part of the centennial celebration, the Wells College Alumnae Award was created. And as Rachel said, it's the highest honor that can be bestowed upon an alum. Now, an alum in the definition of the bylaws isn't necessarily somebody who studied for 4 years at the college. To be considered an alum by the bylaws, you have had to attend Wells for at least 1 year. So in doing the research, and Porter was amazing in going back to campus and scanning things to me, I learned a lot. And I think we all learned a lot about the history. To me, the WCA Award has always existed. But in researching it, they started in 1964, and these are the 4 women that were on the first committee. And because it was such a new idea, what they had to do was they wrote to every single alum in snail mail, mailed letters. Do you know anybody? Is there anybody that you think would be worthy of this? Then they had to come up with the criteria to evaluate the nominees. And think about it, in 1968, no Facebook, no LinkedIn, no internet where you could Google and find all, you know, the information and publications and support to help with the research process. So the criteria to be considered, only living alums can be considered for the nomination. The eligibility begins at the 25th reunion. And one of the requirements is, upon acceptance, is to agree to attend convocation, which takes place during reunion weekend. And during the convocation, the citation is read by the WCA president and their remarks by the president of the college. So you might say, well, you have to attend. Well, of course, every rule has exceptions. So there was one year where the nominee was selected and it was announced and the profile went out and all the publicity went out. And unfortunately, the person passed away 2 months before convocation. And then in recent years, 2020, reunion was canceled. In 2021, we to use Michelle's favorite term, we pivoted due to COVID and we ended up doing a virtual award convocation. And we worked with a dynamic woman who had a video business based in Ithaca. So we had the comments of the award recipients videotaped, and those comments are available. And then we had a virtual cocktail party over Zoom to celebrate the recipients of 2020 and 2021, since we weren't able to gather together. And then this past year in 2022, unfortunately, after the award was accepted and published, the recipient had to deal with some medical issues and was unable to attend. And as a group, we came up with an amazing way of celebrating the recipient's accomplishments and including her in the celebration, even though she was unable to attend. We did live stream it over Zoom. So, and we had a big, huge banner, which I learned last week is going to be an ongoing tradition. So for every year, we're going to have banners for the award recipients. So I've talked a lot in general about what is required. And what I did, each recipient gets a citation. Those citations are available online on the Wells Globe. But here's just a sample of some of the areas of endeavor that the recipients have been commended for their work. Obviously, service to Wells is something that's near and dear to all of our hearts. Public service, a recipient was the U.S. ambassador to Switzerland. We've had a geneticist who worked on decoding the Human Genome Project, an Emmy Award-winning actress, an opera singer, organic farmer. She actually still runs the oldest certified organic farm in the state of New Hampshire. Producers, editors. One of the women who's a producer worked on the McNeil-Lehrer report, and she's also was awarded 4 Emmys. So quite an illustrious group of accomplished alums of the college. So this may not be a common sight. I know Pettibone was a dorm. I think it was closed the first year that I was a first-year student. But when we are on campus in the fall for fall weekend in June, the end of May, beginning of June for reunion, the committee meets in the first floor conference room of Pettibone, and that is our home. A lot of times you'll see award in session, do not disturb. When I was in a different role on the WCA and I would go back, it was the committee members seemed to be cloak and dagger and spies because they were always in committee. They used to lug these 3-ring binders back and forth. They used to not see each other's reports until they arrived on campus. So they'd sit around the table and I'd read Stephanie's binder on her candidate, pass it to the right, and then I'd read Martha's binder on her candidate, pass it to the right, then read Meg's binder, pass it to the right. So a lot of time that was on campus was spent inside these 4 walls. One of the luxuries, and I know I was complaining about technology earlier, but one of the luxuries that we have as current members is that we exchange our reports prior to arriving on campus, which lets us jump into the discussion when we arrive, when we're in person. So that frees up some time where we're not in committee, but we're out attending the cabinet updates and interacting with students and faculty and other alums to revitalize our Wells connection. And from here, I think this is where I hand it off to Stephanie.
So I'll just spend a few minutes talking more specifically about how the committee is set up and particularly like what kind of work the committee does. So the awards committee is made up of 5 members plus 1 non-voting chairperson. And new members are established in the committee in a process that begins with the WCA nominating committee putting forth names of potential committee members to the nominating chair, who then reaches out to a potential member and just gauges their interest in maybe being a member of the committee. If that person is interested, then they're connected with the chair of the awards committee, who will reach out and just provide even more detail about the work that the committee does and exactly what kind of commitment is required for someone to be a member. And as long as that potential committee member is still interested, they are officially dating the committee at that point and will be invited to participate in a meeting with the committee, which is kind of like a meet and greet opportunity. So they get to meet the other members of the committee, kind of introduce themselves, and everybody gets the opportunity to, decide if that new person might be a good fit with the rest of the group. After that point, if the potential member is still interested in serving on the committee, now we say that they are going steady with the committee. They begin attending meetings regularly and will be assigned 1 or more nominees that they'll begin researching. At any point in this whole process, that potential committee member, might decide that, oh, this really isn't for them, or maybe they really aren't able to make the commitment of, being a full member of the committee. And so at any point, someone is able to sort of step back and say, oh, I don't think I'm going to be able to do this. So currently our members are Martha Dove from the class of 79, Meg Tokatins from 1977, Alyssa Frederick and myself, both from class of 2006, and Deb Murphy just joined us in the past couple of months from the class of 91, and then Megan is the chair from the class of 88. Ideally, you would have the committee made up of members who sort of span the decades, kind of representing a wide range of time spent as students on campus. If you take a close look at some of the graduating years of our current members, there's a lot of overlap. Martha and Meg were on campus close to the same time. Alyssa and I were on campus exactly the same time frame. Deb and Megan overlapped a couple of years. So that's sort of a less ideal situation because you just like to have committee members who are more likely to be able to suggest people who might know anyone who might be nominated, anyone that we might be researching for the award, which is really useful to sort of kick off somebody's research of a nominee. But basically what happened sort of during the COVID years, there were some potential committee members that, went through the process of learning more about the commitment and what kind of work was involved and ended up having to step back because they were working on pursuing other career or volunteer opportunities in their lives. So this is kind of the committee that we have at the moment. But I think that, it's a group of people that are working really well together and we're still able to provide a lot of good advice and useful tips to each other. Committee members can serve a 3-year term, and you can serve 2 consecutive terms, and then are able to kind of take a break, walk away from the committee for a little bit of time, and then come back and serve additional terms after that. I think it is important to note that this really is a volunteer position. So what Megan likes to remind us is that nobody's required to ever punch a time clock. The goal is to really just stay updated and active with your research of your nominee or nominees throughout the year. Just sort of keep plugging away at it. The chairperson is selected from within the committee, either the current committee or past committee members, and serves a 3-year term as chair, and again can serve 2 consecutive terms as chair. And so a candidate for chairperson is just somebody who is interested in that role, familiar with the kind of work that's involved, and shows good leadership qualities. So the committee itself, what are we responsible for? Well, the big things are we have 2 in-person meetings that occur on campus, one during fall weekend in September or October, and the other during reunion weekend in June. Within the last few years, the committee also started meeting occasionally online via Zoom, just to sort of help keep committee members a little bit more accountable with their research during the sort of months-long span in between those in-person meetings. And particularly more recently during the COVID years, the committee started meeting on Zoom monthly, mostly just to have an opportunity to check in with each other and, provide sort of a social outlet at a time when people were a lot more socially isolated in the rest of their lives. Members of the committee are constantly conducting research, maintaining the confidentiality of their nominees, and the research on one nominee can take anywhere from several months up to a few years. And so during that time, committee members are building a portfolio with all the information they collect about a nominee, and this information is being regularly shared with fellow committee members, just so everyone on the committee can stay up to date with the research being collected about every nominee, which is important when it comes time to choose which recipients are going to receive the award each year. So following the recipient selection, the committee is then also responsible for preparing a profile of each recipient, and that's what gets published in the Wells Express, and also writing up the citation that is read by the WCA president during the award convocation on reunion weekend. Committee members also act as ambassadors of the college towards recipients and their guests that are on campus during reunion weekend, and also as ambassadors to the awards committee to fellow alums anytime that we're on campus. So the nomination process for nominating someone for the award, there's 2 different ways that you can submit information for a nomination. The first is using the hard copy nomination form that's always included in the registration materials that are handed out at fall weekend and at reunion. The form is also available online at alumni.wells.edu to be filled out online. And so what the nomination form collects is the name and contact information of the nominee, a description of the reason for the nomination or that person's area of distinction. It could be achievement in their career, it could be community service, it could be specifically service to Wells, it can be one or more of those items. And then also the contact information for the person who is making the nomination. And if you look at some of the reports that were written up by the really early award committee, like especially in those first few years, they kind of suggest that the burden of proof of a nominee's eligibility and whether they deserve the reward, and also the responsibility to supply additional contacts who would be able to give further information about a nominee, really lied with the nominator. So if you wanted to nominate someone for this award, it would really have been your responsibility to provide all of these details about this is exactly why this person deserves the award. Here's a list of other people that you can reach out to, and here's their contact information, and they'll back up my story. Currently, basically, someone who's filling out this nomination form, writes a couple of sentences about why they think their nominee is deserving of the award. And then when a committee member is assigned to start researching that nominee, they will start by reaching out to anyone who nominated that person to collect any additional details or see if they have any other contacts or resources. But really the onus now lies on the committee members to do a lot of that research. So certainly no one should ever be sort of scared away from making a nomination by the fear of having to do a lot of the work. Like all the work really is happening by the committee members. So just whatever information you can provide, it's a great jumping off point, and then we kind of take it from there. All right, I think I'm going to hand it over now to Martha.
I'm clicking and talking at the same time, so I'll apologize ahead of time. So during fall weekend, we share and discuss our nominees and bios. We've already made the decision in June for who the following year's recipient will be. And so we just keep working on who might be next in the pipeline or who we need to work on. We share ideas and advice. One of the things that really I appreciate about being on the committee is you can hit a brick wall and someone can say, oh, you know, so-and-so's sister, you know, is my next door neighbor or something like that. So you can really get, you know, and even classes or people that you didn't know when you were at Wells, we can usually give each other ideas or other ways to go about it or things like that. We also have research opportunities. In the basement of Pettibone, there's this room that has file cabinets that has a file on every alum, and I think it has everything that you've ever done. If you've driven by Wells College, I think it's in that folder. So you can find out anything you need to know about the people that you're trying to research. We also attend the awards dinner. The young alumni recipient is awarded during fall weekend, so we attend the dinner there. We also, as Megan said, we get to meet current students, other alumni volunteers, plus who hates going to Wells in the fall with pictures like this. This is a photo from an early commencement celebration, and commencement used to coincide with the Alumni Association meeting. So they wrap it all up at once. We just thought that was a pretty cool picture. The awards committee are the hosts or the ambassadors of the awards convocation. We serve as hosts to the recipient and their family and guests. We try to organize the procession. And then after the convocation is over, we meet back in Pettibone to discuss and select the following year's recipients. The parade includes the recipient who arrives at McMillan in a stagecoach with the president of the college. The parade goes from Maine to McMillan, where the ceremony is held in Phipps Auditorium. And I'm going to guess most of us, if not all of us, have attended. So this is the part you know. And then, as Megan said, Beryl was unable to attend last year due to a last-minute personal issue. The banner was created in her honor, and her good friend Katie Dallum, also the class of '77, accepted the award on Beryl's behalf. And now we're going to have Beryl, going forward, there are going to be banners created for each recipient, and they'll be displayed along the parade route. So not this year and not next year, but soon I think you'll just see a whole bunch of banners as more and more recipients are selected. So, all right. And now it is back to Megan.
Thank you. So I know when I first started attending reunion, I was really excited to see my classmates because it had been a while, and the thought of sitting inside in Phipps Auditorium really didn't have a whole lot of appeal to me, but I ended up going and sitting through an award convocation, and I was hooked. So we have this stained glass from when you enter into Phipps, and this is where after you process through the two aisles of the professors as they're clapping as you enter in, you see this beautiful stained glass as you enter into Phipps. And in front of this table, in front of this picture is a table, and we have a bound copy of all of the citations. So this citation is for Verrills. It's the most recent one. And since the book arts has been in existence, we have had the citations printed at the college through the book arts, which is wonderful. And I delivered the drafts of this year's recipients citations. So we're getting ready to make sure that that gets all printed before the book arts is consumed with printing the diplomas. The recipient gets a copy of the citation as well as the one that goes in the book, and their name is placed on a plaque which is displayed in the conference room that was shown earlier. It's a beautiful ceremony. This is a picture from last year. Katie Dahlem, class of 77, accepted on behalf of Varel. Barb Blum is class of 80, I think, and she does the benediction. Amy Saran McNaughton, class of 86, was the outgoing WCA president, and then President Gibraltar. So after the annual meeting that takes place in chapel on Saturday morning, everybody spills out of Maine for the parade of classes. The parade of classes is led by the stagecoach and the beautiful horses. After a whole bunch of photo opportunities, it goes up to McMillan, and that's when the convocation starts. One funny story that I heard about the Wells stagecoach is a woman who, I forget what year she received the award, Ann Goddard Trotter. I have her book here. She was class of 35, and after she graduated from Wells, she ended up marrying a cowboy and living out on a cattle ranch in Montana. And so as the stagecoach was going, because the stagecoach brings the recipient from the inn up to the college, photo op, and then up to Phipps and McMillan. So on the trip from the inn to the college, I guess they hit a pothole, and Anne recounted, because everybody else who wasn't used to it kind of got a little bit nervous, and Anne recounted being in a stagecoach and hitting a pothole, and somebody was holding a baby, and the baby went flying, and Lisa Ryerson just thought that was the funniest story ever. Anne was also very instrumental in conservation. The mining companies were going out and trying to strip mine around the ranches. So she and her husband created this organization to lobby against the strip mining and protect the environment. So when she got up to McMillan and she was sitting on the stage, and mind you, she was class of 35, so she was well into her 80s when she received the award. And she was sitting up on the stage, and this story was recounted to me by Nell Mon, who is class of 80, who was the chair of the committee at the time. And she saw her moving around and fidgeting, and then she motioned, and a young man ended up going up on stage, and there was a whispered conversation, and he left the stage and he went out, and he came back and he went up back on stage, another whispered conversation. So meanwhile, Nell's sitting in the audience going, oh my God, what's going on? What's happening? And so Anne got up to the podium, and she said, oh, sorry about that. I had the wrong speech. I'm testifying in front of the Montana State Legislature tomorrow, and I brought the wrong folder. So for a woman in her 80s, she was pretty dynamic. I just thought that was a pretty funny story. So Wells alums never stop. We don't have pictures, as I mentioned before, because of COVID. So 2020 convocation was canceled, reunion was canceled. 2021, we combined 2020 and 2021 in the video virtual convocation. Shelley Osmond Baranowski is a scholar of modern Germany. This was from 2019. We have a few pictures to talk about some of the more recent recipients. Rebecca Haig and Fiona Morgan Fine. Becky had a distinguished career working with people in the Boston area, and actually it expanded to a national prominence. She was actually invited to the White House when President Barack Obama announced his National AIDS Initiative. So after she retired from that career, she relocated to Martha's Vineyard and is now working to end food insecurity in her community. And people think of Martha's Vineyard as, you know, a summer destination, but for the year-round population, there really is a high number of people that live below the poverty line. So again, another Wells woman making an impact for the better. Fiona Morgan Fine is devoted to the college and has done so much, not just for her classmates. She's been class secretary and reunion chair for every reunion. And I forget which reunion year it was, but her class was so appreciative of all that she had done for them and for Wells that they created a separate donation, and there is a tree outside of Barler that has a plaque that is dedicated to Fiona, which is just incredible. Rosalie Swan Bass, as I mentioned earlier, she has the oldest organic farm, certified farm in the state of New Hampshire. She was the second farm to apply for certification when it first became available, but the first farm no longer is in business, and her farm still continues to this day. She worked closely with the Cooperative Extension Program at the University of New Hampshire. And if you grow tomatoes in your garden, chances are you're using some of the procedures that Rosalie helped test in conjunction with the UNH, with the, you know, putting down the, and I'm a terrible farmer gardener, but like putting this the black plastic down to over when you're planting to prevent the bugs and to keep the moisture in. And there's
a weed barrier, I think.
Thank you. There's
You're
the word
welcome.
I was looking for.
That's my 10-year reunion one there. So I know we were there, me, Stephanie, and Melanie.
That's funny. So one of the funny stories that I learned about her, so she wanted to be a writer and she moved to New Hampshire and was raising her family. And every time she got a rejection letter for one of her submissions that she'd submitted, she made her garden bigger. So the more rejection letters she got, the more her garden grew, and to the point that they couldn't eat all of the food that she was growing. And her take on organic farming actually started with her mother, because her mother grew everything organically, and that was just instilled in Rosalie as she was growing up. So that's what she knew, and that's what she believed in, and that's what she did. So she started selling and giving stuff away, and she'd sell it to the local restaurants, and she had a little farm stand. And it drove her husband crazy because she'd have like little slips of paper, and he's like, you need a name and you need to have the invoices. And she's like, nah, I just want my garden. So he came home one day with like 300 invoices with Rosalie's garden on the head. And that's how the company got its name. And then he didn't believe in giving her jewelry. So whenever it was like a special occasion, rather than buying her a ring or a necklace, he'd buy her a tractor for her garden, which I just thought that was hysterical, because I would definitely take the ring over the tractor any day. But that's me. And as I mentioned, part of the bylaws that govern the committee is that the list of awardees needs to be displayed prominently on the campus. So in the first year in 1968, there were 10 awards bestowed upon alums, and it was really interesting reading them. As I mentioned, the citations are out on the globe, but I'm a paper person. I know that's probably not good for the environment, but I printed all of them out and I read through them in preparation to do the research for this presentation. And I learned quite a bit that I never knew about the college and its history. Wells College in the First World War raised money, and Fran and I had a conversation about this a couple of weeks ago. So it cost $2,000 to sponsor a person to go to France to work in this canteen, and the Wells College Association actually had two canteens, at least two canteens, and each canteen was staffed by 10 Wells alums, and there was very specific criteria that had to be met. You had to be at least 25 years old, you had to not be married, you had to not have a family member that was serving over in the expeditionary forces. And so half of the money was raised by the alums and half of the money was put up by the YMCA, and $1,000 in 1914 funds equates to almost $20,000 in 2023 purchasing power. So that was one thing that I never knew about Wells. There was actually another alum who received her master's degree from Wells, which I never knew that Wells bestowed master's degrees. So that was kind of an interesting thing to learn about. So I just got the word that we're at about 45 minutes, and I do want to open it up to questions. I do want to say thank you to everybody, Fran and Randy. It was kind of through a conversation with them that the idea of doing this presentation came about. As I mentioned, Rachel was great in pulling and scanning information when she was on campus, which was wonderful. I can't pronounce Kelly's last name, sorry.
Kelly Steidel. Kelly runs our, among other things, she does our Facebook page for the alums, and it's just, she is just always a full of knowledge person.
And
yeah.
You know, everybody was great. I reached out to Nell Mon, who is a former chair of the committee. Sarah Gleason is a former chair and a classmate of mine, so we got to chat about that. I had an email exchange with Rhea to use her quote. I got the Lisa story about the stagecoach. Nell was the one who mentioned it to me, and I probably don't have all of the details down correctly, but you got the gist of it. And then just because it's Wells, Rachel attended an event and met Jane, who I'm thrilled is joining us tonight. She was a former chair, so she and I had a lively exchange via email and comparing and contrasting what being a committee member was then versus now. So I'm really thrilled that she joined. And actually, through my conversation with her, she was trying to piece together other members that had served with her, and in reaching out to Michelle to try and answer that question, we found out that that information only goes back so far in the college's database. So I'm going to make a pitch for Michelle that if you have information about who served when, or if I find more stuff in the research that I plan on continuing when I'm back at campus, to share it with the alumni or the advancement office so that they can make their database even more robust. And then I have to thank every committee member, definitely Martha and Stephanie for peeling me off the ceiling a couple of weeks ago when I had squirrels chasing shiny pennies in my brain trying to figure out what I wanted to cover, and Deb and Alyssa as well. We truly work as a committee. If somebody's having a bad day or a rough patch or is stuck, we're all there for each other. Oh, and Meg, sorry, I didn't mean that. Sorry, Meg. I'm just kind of at the end of my concentration. But we all work together and support each other and our sounding boards. And if, you know, one person's going through a busy season, then somebody else is stepping up, and we're working as a team, and it's wonderful. It's one of the best things about working on the committee and volunteering for the college is that I've gotten to experience learning about women that were on campus when I wasn't there and sharing their stories and getting to interact with, again, other Wells alums who weren't necessarily on campus when I was there, whether they're ahead of me or behind me. So it's a wonderful experience. So if you have any interest in learning more about the committee or partaking and being a committee member, or you know, a fabulous person who you think we should consider for the award, I invite you to reach out. I also invite you to come to reunion this year. Registration just opened yesterday for 3s and 8s. It will be open to everybody soon. And we just recently, in the last few weeks, announced who the 2023 recipients will be. Blair Handley Jenkins is class of 69. And Mary Mitchell Goodman, also known as Twitch, class of 70, will be the award recipients for 2023.
Could I say something?
Absolutely.
Megan and I last week, I'm Jane Hoy and I was the class of 62. And I was invited. I have no idea why I was invited, but I was invited when my first child was like 1 year old. And I would fly to Wells. And my husband was so supportive. He knew how much I liked Wells, but also of this experience. And what I liked the best, so I was there, like in 1969, I'm not sure, but I was on it for about 4 years. But what I loved was working with different, not people in my class, but other, older people. I was the youngest, but getting to know another generation of Wells graduates and working together. And to this day, I remember fondly working, and we didn't have computers in those days. We did everything by hand. And, but anyway, if anyone wants an experience like that, I just thought it was a terrific experience. So thank you for letting me say that. I remember
Absolutely. Thank you.
fondly.